Hello, my name is Jake Schnell, and I'm doing my disease report on MERS-Cov. And so, what is MERS? MERS is Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, and COV just means that it is a coronavirus. And so, as you can tell, it's a respiratory syndrome, so it most causes problems with your respiratory tract. And so, it was first reported in 2012 in Saudi Arabia, and they found that camels are the suspected origin in the animal reservoir that you're able to get it. But there have been new information that they believe maybe it's come from Jordan instead of Saudi Arabia, but it is still uncertain exactly where the origin of this. The only thing they know certain is that it comes from the Middle East, and it's interesting that it comes from the same family of viruses from the common cold to SARS. And so right now, it's a mystery virus that has no known cure, so there's no vaccine, and there's nothing right now they're able to do to help you at all. So what if you come in with MERS? Basically, they can treat you for the symptoms, but they have nothing to be able to help you at all with, you know, treating actual MERS. And so most people at risk are either the elderly or the young people, like a child, or anyone that is immunocompromised or has a weakened immune system, and that could be through having a chronic disease like diabetes, HIV, or anything kind of like that. And so, right now, approximately 36% of reported patients have died having MERS. As you can see, it's 618 people that have died and 1,494 cases so far up to this date, and 13 are now being treated. And so 36%, so 3-ish to 4 people out of 10 die with who contract MERS. Even though it does seem pretty high, most of these people either are immunocompromised or they have something with their immune system is weak. It's usually a healthy person is able to fight off MERS, but that's not always the case. So most of MERS, as you can see, is it doesn't really come through transmission of human to human. So yes, you can get it through human to human contact, or if you have any person's respiratory secretions like coughing or sneezing, you can get it. But the main concern is getting it from camels, because it's very hard that they've been able to find is that it can't really go from person to person very well, or even at all. It's mostly the only way that because it has gone from person to person, but it's only due to the fact that the person usually either has had very close contact with someone else, or the primary care physician that has been treating this person has just not have adequately sanitary requirements that meet it to, prevent you from getting any type of disease. Not wearing the proper protection, anything like that. So it's usually been due to that. And so, as of right now, MERS is not very transmittable from person to person, even though it is contagious. And so, how can I protect myself and other people from MERS? So, it's just, common, like, sense, wash your hands if you don't have that, alcohol or something. If you need to cough or sneeze, have it in a tissue or, into your elbow, and try to avoid anyone you think might have, it doesn't have to be MERS, but any type of disease, you don't want to avoid touching their things or, having close contact with them in any way that could cause you to get it. And of course, avoid camels. And so, just the main symptoms, like most people get, are just from just mild respiratory syndromes, disease. You can get or disease. You can get fever, cough, shortness of breath. Pneumonia is common too, but none of these are always present. And then, like, more rare ones you can get are like gastrointestinal problems, nausea or vomiting, or you've been able to get severe symptoms like respiratory failure. So you can get acute respiratory syndrome. You can get organ failure or septic shock, but those are in rare cases and doesn't happen to everyone. And so, of course, the main concern is that it's respiratory syndrome, so that's what it's mainly attacking and causing problems for people. And so, people, like, they've been able to compare it to SARS, which was a very big concern in China, which, what it does is that it just builds up fluid into your lungs, and so you're not able to get oxygen, and if you're not able to get oxygen, you can't really breathe, and the fluid just keeps building up and building up, and so you can die from it, just from asphyxiation and lack of oxygen. And so the type of virus is that it is a beta coronavirus, and it's under the C lineage of viruses, and there are 4 classes, and it's under the C one, and it's a beta coronavirus is this genus, and it is its own species as of right now. There's no other strains or anything like that, and it's very interesting that they have been testing it with SARS and comparing it a lot to SARS, but actually SARS, its evolutionary distance is very far from each other. They're not very close in DNA and evolutionary. They're not very similar, but they are very similar to these bat coronaviruses HKU4 and HKU5, which they believe what happened was that a long time ago, the bat had this virus, and it contracted it to a camel, and so the virus was able to get into that camel and live, and it mutated, and so now you can't get it from a bat. You can only get it from a camel, but so that's why, any cause of concern shouldn't be from a bat. It should only be for a camel, and so that is so that's why they believe it comes from bat, and of course everything comes from bat. But it's still very interesting that you try to compare it to SARS. And so the origin is what they believe is that it's in Saudi Arabia or Jordan, but the main thing is that it's from the Middle East, and right now it is only located in the Middle East and only can be contracted in the Middle East, unless I guess you have a camel farm or something, but they've only found cases starting from the Middle East. So anyone who's ever contracted it from a different country or brought it to a different country, and there have been 26 countries that have where patients have come in with MERS, they've all been and traveled from the Middle East. And so right now, it's only located in the Middle East is where you can get it and contract it. And so nowhere else you've been able to. And then the largest that it's been going from human to human through contact is in South Korea. But other than that, it's very localized, and you can only really get it from the Middle East. And so going forward, which is interesting, is that so there is no vaccine for it, and there's nothing you can do to treat MERS at all. But what they've been able to find is, by comparing it with SARS, is they've been doing a bunch of testing that they've done with SARS and figuring out what, what's susceptible, what SARS is susceptible, and they've been doing it is that there is this type 1 INF, which is a protein that is in your innate immune response that in SARS, it's not very susceptible in SARS, but it's actually very susceptible in the MERS, and so it's very interesting. So they've now been able to try to use this now to try to find a vaccine or come up with something to be able to prevent people or stop people or help people who've contracted MERS. And so the INF binds to specific things on the cell surface, so by using this going forward, they might be able to come up with a vaccine, and it'll be great for everyone, because what they're mainly concerned now is that even though it's not a very deadly disease, or is what they're mostly concerned with is that it will mutate and be able to spread from person to person very quickly and very rapidly, like SARS did. And so that's why they're trying really hard, and they're really scared because they don't want this to happen, because this could turn to a worldwide, epidemic, or it can cause just a very large problem to the Middle Eastern countries as it did to China. And so that's why they're trying to work as hard as they can and trying to figure out a ways to come up with a vaccine, because it could cause lots of problems. And so they've been able to figure it out. They've been able to try to work with it and trying to figure it out. And so these are my citations, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Thank you very much.